Welcome back, beautiful soul. In part three of chapter four, we're entering into one of the most exciting and empowering parts of becoming supernatural, understanding how your body's energy centers actually work. Many of us have heard the term chakras or energy centers, but Dr. Joe helps us view them not just as spiritual concepts, but as real, measurable centers of electromagnetic information in our bodies. These centers influence everything: our health, hormones, emotions, even our sense of safety or purpose. I need you to run that back if you didn't get that. When we bring awareness to them, not just conceptually, but energetically, we begin to create alignment between the mind, the heart, and the field that's around us, our aura or electromagnetic field that exists all around us. This section walks us through each center, their physical and emotional functions, because they all have physical and emotional functions, and how we can become more intimate with the energy flowing through them. Think of it as getting reacquainted with your own divine intelligence, layer by layer. Let's explore what's already inside you. Here we go. How your body's energy centers work. We're about to take a closer look at each of the body's energy centers. But first, I want to explain a bit more about how they work. Think of each of them as an individual center of information. Each has its own specific energy that carries corresponding level of consciousness, its own emission of light expressing very specific information, or its own frequency carrying a certain message. Each also has its own individual glands, its own unique hormones, its own chemistry, and its own individual plexus of neurons. Think of these individual clusters of neurological networks as mini brains. And if each one of those centers has its own individual brain, then each also has its own individual mind. Because if you have a brain, you have a mind. Take a look at figure 4.3, which lists the location of each energy center, as well as the anatomy and physiology that are associated with each. I'm going to show you this. You can screenshot, hold on. But also get the book. Get the book. Boom. Okay. As you learned in the second chapter, when consciousness activates neurological tissue, it creates mind. Like when you want to have a sexual fantasy, and you start thinking sexual thoughts, it activates certain organs in the body, tissue, hormones, all that, and you have sensations. The same way, when consciousness activates the neurological tissue, it creates a mind in each area. Mind is the brain in action. So if each one of these centers has a plexus of neurons, then each has its own individual mind. Or better said, each center has a mind of its own. So yeah, that reminds me of the joke that women would always make with men to say like the little guy down there has a mind of its own. Anyways, that's what it brought to mind. What activates the mind is energy with a directive and intention, a conscious intent. When each of these centers becomes activated, it in turn activates hormones, tissues, chemicals, and cellular functions, and it emits energy. For example, when your first center, the seat of your reproductive glands, is activated with energy, its mind has a very specific agenda and intention. When you as a conscious being have a thought or a fantasy, that's consciousness, by the way, acting on neurological tissue, the next thing you know, your body is physiologically changing, and therefore so is your energy. Your body secretes chemicals and hormones from those corresponding glands to emotionally prepare you for intercourse. You have more energy in that center now, and it's releasing its own specific frequency, carrying an intentional message. That energy carrying the conscious intention is activating that reproductive center, and the mind and the brain And the mind in the brain is influencing the mind in the body at the level of its individual nerve plexus. This mind, located in that specific area of the body through this mini brain, operates on the subconscious level through the autonomic nervous system. It's beyond your conscious control. We could say that the body is now following the mind as the mini brain in that energy center activates the related glands, which in turn activate corresponding hormones that signal the appropriate chemicals to change the body's emotional state and physiology. That's deep, y'all. And then you are emitting a very clear energy carrying a specific directive out of that center. We have all felt that kind of energy from a very sexual person. Some people just ooze sexuality. And I've encountered people like this, and you can just feel their energy. You're like, "Mm, sometimes you're like physically attracted to that person because you're like, damn, like they turning me on, whatever the case may be. Once that energy is moving through that neurological tissue or plexus of neurons, it creates mind at that level. So when it's activated, that center has a mind of its own. The second center also has a mind of its own. And when we activate its mini brain and thus its mind, we trust our gut. And that same sequence of events happens in this center as we just saw in the first energy center, but with different corresponding neural circuitry, hormones, chemicals, emotions, energy, and information. In fact, this area has been called the second brain because of the hundreds of millions of neurons and neural connections here, more than exist in either the spinal cord or in the peripheral nervous system. In fact, 95% of the feel good hormone serotonin in your body is found not in your brain, but in your bowels. Did not know that. Serotonin is found in my bowels. I didn't know that. So, trusting your gut literally means trusting your instincts. It's almost as if the body and this center's brain can override our analytical, rational thinking brain and mind. How about your heart center? What happens when you lead with your heart? Like the first two centers, this fourth center, which is located in the middle of your chest, has its own frequency, its own hormones, its own chemicals, its own emotions, and its own mini brain that draws from a field of energy and information that surrounds it. And when you lead with your heart, you tend to be more caring, more kind, inspired, selfless, compassionate, giving, grateful, trusting, and patient. When this mini brain gets that information, it sends instructions and messages to the organs and tissues that are located in that part of the body. And you emit loving energy from this specific center of information. Now, let's look at each of these energy centers in more detail. Some of the centers will overlap a bit in function, but for the most part, if you know even just a little about the body, they are pretty self explanatory. You can review figure 4.3 again if you need to, which is that shows the different energy centers. Getting better acquainted with the energy centers. The first energy centers governs the region of your sex organs, including your perineum, your pelvic floor, the glands that are connected to your vagina or penis, your prostate, if you're a man, your bladder or your lower bowel, and your anus. This energy center has to do with reproduction and procreation, elimination, sexuality, and sexual identity. The hormones estrogen and progesterone in women and testosterone in men are correlated with this center. This energy center is also associated with the inferior mesenteric nerve plexus. It's a lot of scientific words here. Bear with me, y'all. A tremendous amount of creative energy exists in the first center. Think about the amount of energy you use to make life and create a baby. When this center is in balance, your creative energy flows easily, and you are also grounded in your sexual identity. The second energy center is behind and slightly below your navel. It governs the ovaries, the uterus, the colon, the pancreas, and lower back. It has to do with consumption, digestion, elimination, and breaking down food into energy, including digestive enzymes and juices, as well as the enzymes and hormones that balance your blood sugar levels. This center is also connected to the superior mesenteric nerve plexus. I did a better job in that one. This energy is also related to social networks and structures, relationships, support systems, family cultures, and interpersonal relationships. Think about it as the center for holding on or letting go, consuming or eliminating. When this center is in balance, you feel safe and secure in both in your environment and in the world. The third energy center is located in the pit of your gut. It governs the stomach, small intestine, spleen, liver, gallbladder, adrenal glands, and kidneys. The associated hormones include adrenaline and cortisol, the kidney hormones, the chemicals like renin and angiotensin, erythropoietin, I don't know how to say that, and all the liver enzymes, as well as the stomach enzymes like pepsin, trypsin, chymotrypsin, and hydrochloric acid. This energy center is also related to the solar plexus, which is also called the celiac plexus. It's no wonder that if you've ever experienced anxiousness, it's all usually felt in this third center, your solar plexus. And if you have any digestive issues or any issues with any of the organs that he explained here, that would explain why. Because where you carry your stress in that energy center, it explains a lot. Anyways, here we go. This center is associated with our willpower, self importance, control, drive, aggression, and dominance. It's the center of competitive action and personal power, self esteem, and directed intention. When the third center is in balance, you use your will and your drive to overcome your environment and the conditions in your life. Unlike the second center, this center becomes naturally activated when you perceive that your environment is not safe or is unpredictable. So you must protect and care for your tribe and yourself. The third center is also active when you want something and you need to use your body to get it. The fourth energy center is located in the space behind your breastbone. It governs the heart, lungs, thymus gland, the body's main immunity gland, known as the fountain of youth. The hormones associated with this center include growth hormone and oxytocin, did I say that right? As well as a cascade of 1,400 different chemicals that stimulate the immune system's health via the thymus gland, responsible for growth, repair, and regeneration of the body. The nerve plexus this center governs is the heart plexus. The first three centers are all about survival and reflection, our animal nature or our humanity. But in this fourth energy center, we are now moving from being selfish to being selfless. This center is associated with the emotions of love and caring, nurturing compassion, gratitude, thankfulness, appreciation, kindness, inspiration, selflessness, wholeness, and trust. It is where our divinity originates. It is the seat of the soul. When the fourth center is in balance, we care about others and we want to work in cooperation for the greatest good of the community. We feel a genuine love for life, we feel whole, and we are satisfied with who we are. This is why I feel like more people need to get into this work. This is why I'm doing this because whoever is intended to find this information and use it and do the blessings of the energy centers and just really dive into this work, you are becoming a light worker. You are becoming activated in this world. You are elevating the planet with your love and compassion. It changes everything. And to me, this is I love this work so much because I feel like it's truly the gateway to Christianity, to divinity in general, no matter what your faith is. It really makes it tangible for us to obtain being like Christ, being like Buddha, being like all of the great mystics who we have religions based on. I really truly believe this. But anyways, the fifth energy center is located in the center of your throat. It governs the thyroid, parathyroid, the salivary glands, the tissues of the neck. The hormones associated with this center include the thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, thyroxine, the parathyroid chemicals that govern the body's metabolism and circulating calcium levels. The nerve plexus this center governs is the thyroid plexus. This center is associated with expressing the love you felt in the fourth center. So the throat center is expressing the love that you feel in the heart center, as well as speaking your truth and personally empowering your reality through language and sound. So if you've ever struggled to speak your truth, you've ever struggled to express emotions and feelings, which is a lot of men, right? And for women, a lot of women have a hard time expressing truth, and a lot of men have a hard time expressing emotions. Throat chakra. When the fifth center is balanced, you voice your present truth, which includes expressing your love. So it's not just what you're feeling in the moment as your authentic self, but it's also your love. You feel so pleased with yourself and with life that you just have to share your thoughts and feelings. The sixth energy center is located in the space between the back of your throat and the back of your head. So right up in here. It governs the pineal gland, which is a sacred gland. Some people call the pineal the third eye, but I call it the first eye. It's associated with the door to higher dimensions and shifting your perception so you can see beyond the veiled or see reality in a non linear way. People used to tell me that the third eye was right here. Guys, it's not right here. They lied. It's actually in the back of your head, between the back of your throat and the back of your head. So my throat is here, in my mouth, whatever. The back of my throat, if you go through the mouth, and the back of the head is somewhere back up in here, this little soft spot right there between the skull and the neck. So yeah, that's where your third eye, pineal gland, is actually located. When this center is opened, it's like a radio antenna you can use to tune into a higher frequency beyond the five senses. So it really is an antenna, y'all. This is where the alchemist in you awakens. I devote a whole chapter to the pineal gland later in the book, but for now, know that the pineal gland secretes hormones like serotonin and melatonin, as well as some other wonderful metabolites, which are responsible for your circadian rhythms of feeling awake in response to visible light during the day and sleepy in response to being in darkness at night. So when you see light or you sense light, the way we sense it, your body starts to wake up because your pineal gland is secreting serotonin. And then when you're in darkness, your body secretes melatonin. So you become more drowsy and sleepy. That's dope to know. I never do that. In fact, the pineal gland is sensitive to all electromagnetic frequencies besides visible light and can produce corresponding chemical derivatives of melatonin that change your view of reality. When this gland is in balance, your brain works in a clear manner. You are lucid, more conscious of both your inner world and your outer world, seeing and perceiving more each day. The seventh energy center is located in the center of your head and includes the pituitary gland. This gland has been called the master gland because it governs and creates harmony in a downward cascade from this center of your brain to your pineal gland, your thyroid gland, your thymus gland, your adrenal glands, your pancreatic gland, and all the way to your sexual glands. This is the center of the body where you experience your greatest expression of divinity. He says it's literally like in the meditation behind your eyes. So you see where my eyes are positioned? Inside your skull, behind your eye socket, right? It's not in the back of your head, but it's behind the eyes. And that's right in the center of the brain, in the center of the head, rather. This is the center of the body where you experience your greatest expression of divinity. This is where your divinity, your highest level of consciousness, originates. When this gland is in balance, you are in harmony with all things. And finally, your eighth energy center is located about 16 inches or 40 centimeters above the head. So it's the only energy center that is not associated with any area of the physical body. That's 16 centimeters, or can you say that? 16 inches. 16 inches. So get a ruler and add 4 inches on top of that. That's where your eighth energy center is located. The Egyptians called it the Ka, Ka. It represents your connection to the cosmos, to the universe, to the whole. When this energy center becomes activated, you feel worthy to receive, and that opens you up to insights, epiphanies, deep understandings, and creative downloads of frequency and information that come into your physical body and brain, not from memory stored in your nervous system, but from the cosmos, from the universe, from the unified field, or whatever you want to call that power that is greater than our individual selves. We access the data and memory of the quantum field through this center, which is your eighth center, aka your whew, evolving our energy. Now that I've described each of these energy centers in detail, let's take a more dynamic look at how they can work. Certainly, our bodies are designed to use energy in each of these centers, as I have outlined. But what happens when we do more with our energy than just survive? What happens when, instead of releasing all our energy outward to procreate, to digest food, to run from danger, and so on, we begin to consistently evolve some of that energy upward from one center to the next, increasing its frequency as it ascends? So, if we go from the sexual organs and keep placing our attention and awareness and increasing that energy as we move up the centers more and more and more and more, he's asking what could possibly happen then. Here's what that would look like. We start out by channeling our creative energy from the first center. When we feel safe and secure enough to create, that creative energy evolves, ascending and flowing into the second center. When we have to master some limitation or overcome some condition in our environment, we are able to put the creative energy to good use. And then it will flow into the third center, the seat of our will and power. When we successfully transcend the adversity in our lives, which has challenged us to grow and overcome, we have the opportunity to feel more whole, more free, and more satisfied when we're then able to feel genuine love for self and others as the energy flows through and activates the fourth center. When that happens, we then want to express our present truth. What we've learned or the love, I'm sorry, what we've learned or the love or wholeness we feel that allows the energy to then move through and turn on the fifth center. After this, when the evolution of energy activates the sixth center, dormant areas in the brain open so that the veil of illusion is lifted and we perceive a broader spectrum of reality than we ever saw before. In other words, you stop believing in the illusions, which is fear, lack, anything that makes you feel separate. Those are all illusions. You stop believing in them when you can move up from, you know, the first center all the way to the sixth center, which is your pineal gland, your third eye, and you start to feel more connected to the whole. We then begin to feel enlightened. Our body moves more into harmony and balance, and our external environment, including the natural world surrounding us, also moves into more harmony and balance as the energy ascends in activating the seventh center. Once we feel that enlightened energy, we begin to truly feel worthy, and the energy can finally rise to activate the eighth center, which is the Ka, 16 inches above your head, where we receive the fruits of our efforts, visions, dreams, insights, manifestations, and knowingness that come not from anywhere within our minds and bodies as memories, but from a greater power in and around us. This continuous flow of evolving energy from the first center to our eighth center is illustrated in figure 4.4a, which is here on this side. Well, actually, yeah, let's not confuse you. Screenshot. That's the kind of personal evolution that happens when the energy flows consistently, the ideal. What all too often happens, however, is that the events of our lives and the way we react to them cause our energy to get stuck so that it doesn't flow in this magnificent pattern I just outlined. The places in your body where the energy gets stuck are the energy centers associated with issues that you're dealing with. Figure 4.4b depicts what happens when the energy gets stuck and you can't flow to higher centers. So, this is why we experience disease, because when we're focused on problem solving and all the things, we're consuming our energy that we need for healing and transformation and downloads and manifestations. But we can't because we are conflicted with people and problems in our lives, and the energy gets stuck. And we didn't even know that. If, for example, a person has been sexually abused or has been conditioned since childhood to think that sex is bad, their energy can stay stuck in the first center, the center associated with sexuality, and they may have problems accessing creativity. If on the other hand, a person can access their creative energy but doesn't necessarily feel safe enough to use their energy in the world, instead feeling victimized by their social and interpersonal relationships, or if they have been traumatized or betrayed by another person, they might hold on to that energy in their second center. Such a person would be likely to feel excessive amounts of guilt, shame, suffering, low self esteem, or fear. We know examples of this in our lives. Now, if a person can get their energy flowing up to the third center, but they have ego issues and they feel self important, self absorbed, controlling, domineering, angry, overly competitive, and bitter, then their energy gets stuck in their third center and they may have control issues or motivation issues. If a person cannot open up their heart and feel love and trust, or if they're afraid to express love or how they truly feel, energy can also become frozen in the fourth and fifth centers, respectively. While energy can get stuck in any of the energy centers, the first three centers are where it tends to get stuck most often. And when it's stuck, it can evolve and flow in the seamless current described earlier, which switches on a higher energy centers where we're in love with life and want to give back. Getting that circuit flowing the way it was designed to do is the whole point of doing blessing of the energy centers meditation. We bless each of these centers so we can get stuck energy flowing again. And that is where I'm going to end off part three. And now that we've gotten to know these centers on a deeper level, in part four, we're going to learn how to evolve our energy and begin drawing directly from the quantum field itself. That's where the activation